Hello everyone, this is Sen from Sen Invest, and today I'll be answering the question, are the new Degen Defi projects just a new kind of HYIP? So before we get in, I'd like to give a disclaimer that I'm not a financial advisor. I'm not saying buy into any project or sell out of any project that you're in. I'm simply offering my opinion and education on the GFi space. Here, the project for today is Seifu. There are a ton of projects out there, but I've chosen Seifu because it's been getting a lot of attention in the DeFi space lately. Seifu claims to have the highest fixed APY in crypto at over 300,000%. So there have been a number of Seifu forks which have come out since Seifu launched about a month ago. However, they don't seem to have gotten the same type of traction which Seifu has, which I think is due in part to the marketing which is done. Here, Seifu marketing is absolutely brilliant. Just looking at their website, it gets investors very excited about getting into a project with a very high APY. Let's pop over here to the Seifu dashboard, which gives us some useful numbers such as price, market cap, circulating supply. And now we can go look at the white paper. The white paper tells us that Seifu is a sustainable asset fund for universal users. So I think this name was chosen very carefully as part of marketing. Seifu sounds a lot like safe, which is very good in the finance world, and sustainable is also very good in the finance world. So this overview really just explains how Seifu works. It's an auto-compounding token. It's also called rebase. It basically has an elastic supply, so it can be burned here in the fire pit. It's also created when it's paid out in interest to the users. Seifu does have some protection mechanisms here, such as the Seifu Insurance Fund. The Seifu Insurance Fund aims to keep holders safe by avoiding flash crash through price stability, achieving long-term sustainability and future growth of Seifu protocol, and greatly reducing downside risk. The Treasury here, it provides support to the Seifu Insurance Fund in case there's an extreme drop in price in the Seifu token. And to give an example of that, let's go to the Seifu chart here. So here we can see there have been several extreme price drops. This was around the time when some negative news about Seifu came out. There have been a lot of videos done about the CERTIC incident, so I won't really go into it in depth, but it was basically one of the auditors of the project claimed to have found some issues with it and withdrew their listing of Seifu as being a safe project. However, a lot of people did buy the dip, and for at least one of these, the Seifu Insurance Fund also kicked in to push the price back up again. And it has recovered a bit, although not to the high that it had previously. The fire pit is useful to offset the inflation, which occurs due to minting new Seifu as interest for Seifu holders. So the tokens, part of this 2.5% of tokens is burned in the fire pit. The auto liquidity engine is helpful for getting traders of the Seifu token a better price when they're doing a token swap. And last of all, I'd like to look at the buy and sell fees here. So investors in Seifu should be aware that they're going to be paying a 14% amount on buys, and then when they go to sell, it's going to be 16%. So combined, that's about 30% of Seifu will be paid back into the project, and that is to sustain the API, which is already very high. This breakdown in trading fees shows exactly where the different percentages are going, so to which funds those percentages are being paid. So the big question is, should I get into Seifu? Seifu has a very brilliant CEO, Brian Legend, behind it, as well as marketing for the project has really been superb. However, I would say that the decision to get into a project, and if so, how much, is really a very fine balance of fear and greed. Here, this chart shows a market cycle and also the different emotions which accompany that market cycle. So let's say this line is where you get in, you're very optimistic about the project. As the price of the token goes up, then you get even more excited until the market reaches its peak. And then you start to get uneasy and go into denials. It heads back down to the price where you got in, your break-even point. When it dips below your break-even point, you start going into pessimism, panic, capitulation. Then at the very bottom, the rock bottom, despair. Maybe some investors sell out at this point. And then hope and relief come, and you're back to optimism again and thinking maybe about getting in further. So this balance of fear and greed is nothing new. There's a very classic example of this from a few hundred years ago. Maybe some of you recognize this guy. His name's Isaac Newton, a famous British scientist. Newton lost a fortune in a stock bubble called the South Sea Company. After losing that money, Newton noted, "I can calculate the movement of stars, but not the madness of men." So I think that this quote still holds true today. So let's look now at what exactly happened to Newton. So here Newton invested near the bottom. He exited his initial investment. But then as the price of the stock continued to rise, a classic case of FOMO, or fear of missing out, came upon him. So he got in, and then when the price dumped, he got out, and he was basically broke at that point. So now we have powerful computers at our disposal to do billions of calculations in a second, which Newton didn't have. However, we haven't overcome the problems of fear and greed, which still plague investors even to this day. And this is something that we need to deal with on an individual basis. So let's get into a hypothetical Seifu scenario so we can understand how a typical investment might go. So here I have prices for Seifu, Binance Coin, and US dollar. It should be noted that the APYs are shown as decimals, not percentages, because decimals are easier for me to work with here in my spreadsheet. Let's say I make an initial investment of 1.16 Seifu, which cost me about half of a Binance Coin, or $220. So I get 86% of that Seifu after the 14% tax, so that gives me about 1 Seifu. I leave it in the protocol, I compound it for a year, which then gives me 38.29. If you want to know where I came up with that number, that is from Seifu's own calculator over here. So let's say I put in 1, and I set the range for 1 year, I get 3829.25. Now, I want to get out after 1 year. So there's a 16% tax, and after that tax, I get 84% of my Seifu, or about 3,200. So here, I want to look at my break-even price after 1 year. So just relative to the Binance Coin itself, the break-even would be 0.00015. Now, if Binance goes up or down, we can adjust this value here, the 440. But let's say the price stays the same. This is assuming the price stays the same. My break-even price would be about 7 cents for each Seifu. Now, in my opinion, I think that it's good to track your break-even point and your gains and losses using the coin which you initially used to get in here, which would be the Binance Coin. This makes things a lot more straightforward and less complex. One argument is that if I just bought Binance Coin and didn't buy Seifu with Binance Coin, what would my holdings be after that year? So that's where the US dollar comes into play. Now we should note that the advertised APY is 3829.25. However, after the taxes, your actual APY, which is taken by dividing this amount of Seifu we get after the tax by the original amount which we bought, gives us this amount here, the 2766, which is considerably lower than what is advertised. However, I do believe that it is within fair marketing practices to advertise gains before taxes. So now let's try to answer the question of this video. Are degenerate DeFi projects like Seifu and other node projects just a new kind of HYIP? So let's first look at the definition of degenerate. Degen trading or degen mode is when a trader does trading without due diligence and research. So they're really just getting into the FOMOs and the pumps. They're blindly following the crowds, which I wouldn't be surprised if there's a lot of that going on in DeFi projects. So it's really just a case of wanting to get in, ideally, early, before the crowds get in, and then get out before the crowds want to get out for the highest gains. So now let's look at what a HYIP is. According to Investopedia, a HYIP is a high yield investment program that's fraudulent, and it purports to offer extraordinarily high returns on investment. This does sound a lot like many DeFi projects. However, the key takeaways here are that it's fraudulent and that most are Ponzi schemes. So now, let's look at a comparison between the two types of projects. So here, a HYIP typically offers returns in fiat or the crypto equivalent of fiat currency. Degen DeFi projects offer their returns in the project's own token. HYIPs used to take cash deposits. However, nowadays a lot of them also take crypto deposits. Degen DeFi projects would take crypto deposits such as ETH, which will be Strong Block, BNB. A lot of node projects and also the Seifu use BNB, AVAX and Phantom on some of the node projects I've seen out there. The profits are paid in HYIPs is relative to fiat, and in Degen DeFi projects is relative to a project's token. Withdrawals in a HYIP are paid using income from new investments coming into the project. In a Degen DeFi project, there's a little bit of a twist here. So investors wanting to get out of the project sell their token on the market to investors wanting to get into the project. So that means really the vulnerability here is that the investors in a HYIP are really more at the mercy of the company and more or less indirectly with the new incoming investors. Whereas in a DeFi project, investors are at the mercy of the market. So if the price in the market goes down, then the tokens might have to be sold at a loss or held in hopes that the market will go back up again. So in the worst case scenario, the end of the road comes and profits accumulate in the HYIP, but they can't ever be withdrawn. So really the profits just vanish into thin air and the company packs up and leaves town. So the beauty of crypto is that it offers a lot more transparency than the traditional HYIPs in that we can see transfers between wallets, and there are also certain protection mechanisms such as locking liquidity for a predetermined amount of time to prevent the CEOs from running off with the capital. Here, the risk in a HYIP is really the capital deposited minus the capital withdrawn after the fees. In a Degen project, it's pretty much the same, although I noted here that sometimes the fees are referred to as taxes. Now, this is my suggested entry. You should do your own due diligence and invest only what you feel comfortable with losing. I would say invest up to the maximum predetermined risk in a HYIP. In a Degen DeFi project, you would buy token at lows near support, and you're going to buy until you accumulate tokens up to your maximum predetermined risk. This allows you to use technical analysis to your advantage. You're buying the dip, basically, or you're doing some kind of dollar cost averaging. The suggested exit for the HYIP would be to withdraw the profits. Notice I said profits and not the initial capital, but you are going to eventually recover that initial capital if you're able to withdraw profits before the HYIP collapses. In a Degen DeFi project, that would be selling the token profits at highs, so near a resistance level, until you can recover the invested funds, again using technical analysis to your advantage. So I believe that in a Degen DeFi project, if you play it correctly, there is more of an edge for an investor that has some knowledge of technical analysis. So now let's answer the question behind this video. Is Seifu just a new kind of HYIP? In my opinion, I don't think so. I've watched some of the AMAs that Brian Legend, the CEO, has done, and he is a very clever marketer, but I don't believe that he has fraudulent intent. Now, it could just be that his clever marketing is so clever that it's convinced me he doesn't have fraudulent intent. But for now, I honestly don't believe he has fraudulent intent. I also believe the project is much more transparent than some other projects have been. However, it is still a very high APY project, and thus you should invest with caution. So if you found this video helpful, I welcome you to subscribe to my channel and give this video a thumbs up. Stay safe out there, everyone. Bye-bye.